Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sarah Sweeney Denham. I'm enjoying the cooling evening on my back porch here. I'm the head of Greentown Montessori School, and I'm very happy to welcome two presenters as part of our parent speaker series. At Greentown, we love to have opportunities for everyone to learn together as our children do at school. And the parent speaker series is awesome because the topics are put together by our parents every year around topics that are near and dear to their heart or they want to learn more about. So I want to thank our wonderful parent, Liv Lee, for returning. She's a regular speaker for us. And we're happy that Maria Cordero-Ricardo is also joining us. Maria, her dental practice is near Hallahan, Greentown North. So got to meet Maria way back in the beginning of the year when she stopped by to welcome us to the neighborhood. So thank you both for being here, and I'll turn it over to you, Liv.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. We're excited for this collaborative parent ed tonight on nutrition and oral health. It's something that both Maria and I feel strongly about, and we often find ourselves chatting it up in the offices as we're right next to each other. And there's a lot in common between the two, more than one would think. I'm going to let Maria do a lot of the oral health part as she's the dentist. And I'm also going to talk a lot about lunch boxes tonight because this has been a hot topic for parents, and with summer camp coming up. Yeah. And then so we're going to have a combined evening here. I'm working at part-time over at Advocare Fairmount Pediatrics doing pediatric nutrition. So I see my fair share of picky eating there. And parents wondering just like what to feed their children. So hopefully this will address some of that. Maria, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Liv. As she mentioned, my practice shares a nice wall with where Liv practices part-time. I'm over at Philadelphia Pediatric Dentistry in the Rodan building. So I drop my son off at kindergarten and wander my way past your north location, as Sarah said. So my practice is a very young practice, and partially because it is newly opened this last July. We're coming up on a 1-year anniversary, but the other part, it's a very special practice. It's young child focused. Younger children are my joy space. And that's why I intersect so much with Liv, because there is a lot of oral health conversation in introduction of first solids. There is a lot of oral health conversation in the snacks and foods that we choose to feed our children. And there's a lot of oral health conversation in that picky eater phase and where the challenges are. And so I spend all day, every day talking about food and diet. And I just wanted to share like the high point of my day today was a second visit with a kid that was getting cavities for no reason. We couldn't figure it out because he had this beautiful diet, never ate refined sugars and brushed it. He did all the right things. And then it found out that this really great eater put lemon juice on everything. He put lemon juice on his organic kale salad that he ate every day. And he put lemon juice on all the meats that he was eating every day. And so this awesome diet had this nuance to it. And the solution was diet too, without disrupting all these great choices. And that's why I love working with someone like Liv on hand, because those conversations are really cool to me.
Thanks, Maria. All right, everyone, I'm gonna dive into my part here, which does focus a lot on lunch boxes and sort of what to feed your child, especially at school. I just need to figure out how to share my screen here. Okay, sorry. Let's see. I never know how this does this. Share. Okay. Hopefully I got this one right. Yeah. Can everyone see that? So Not. Okay, thank you. So here's in the past, I've done talks on more focusing on childhood nutrition and feeding, touching a little bit upon picky eating as a normal developmental process. And this one is going to be the lunchbox edition. Many parents about just, I guess, sort of run out of ideas or get bored or just want to make sure they're, feeding their children proper nutrition. So I think the number one thing really is just to keep it simple. Like, they need carbohydrates, they need protein, fats, fruits and vegetables, and dairy every now and then. And honestly, like when I'm packing my son's lunch every day, or even like dinner that night, even if it's not exciting, I'm like, okay, they need a carb, a protein, and a fruit or veggie. The fats will oftentimes come into play as well. But here's why you need all of that. And here's why it keeps your child going all day. Is carbohydrates will give your child energy throughout the day. Those are found in fruits and grains, whole grains, refined grains, even milk and yogurt have it as well. Protein, as we know, helps support muscle and bone growth in your immune system. The sources are in meat and poultry, fish, eggs, beans. It also helps to keep you satiated all day long, as do fats. Fats are important for many body processes and some for brain development, found in full fat dairy, nuts, seeds, avocados, oils, and some fatty fish. And then fruits and vegetables, which are full of fiber, water, minerals and vitamins. And, a lot of parents sometimes their child doesn't like as many vegetables, but are big fruit eaters. And that's fantastic, because a low veggie intake can definitely be offset with a high fruit intake. So if you're concerned as a parent about their child getting nutrients, not getting the proper nutrients because they don't eat all the a wide variety of veggies or even any veggies, if they have a variety of fruit, they're going to be okay. And then you can slowly work in the veggies over time. You can work on that. And then, dairy, most days of the week, they do need calcium, or a fortified non-dairy equivalent. Please make sure if it is non-dairy that it is fortified in some way. That calcium is really hard to get, in bulk in other ways. And then this protein, fat, and fiber, keep those in mind all the time, even as an adult, because this is what's going to keep you satiated all day long in between meals. So you're not constantly craving other snacky foods. And as Maria will tell you, that this constant grazing from children is not good for teeth. So you want to keep them full. You probably have noticed that if your toddler will eat all of their lunch one day and then maybe not touch it the next, or it goes light. This is really normal. The appetites vary from day to day and from meal to meal. You want to look at toddler intake from anywhere from 3 to 5 days, not per meal and not per day necessarily. So it's over a greater span. And as your child gets older, I know this might be hard for a 2.5-year-old, but 3, 4, definitely 5, you work with your child to pack their foods, talk to them about what foods they like. If it comes back, ask them why. Maybe they have opinions on something that you didn't know, engage them in a conversation. And remember, lunch can be short, kids can talk a lot. So anything you could do to help them easily eat, cut things into smaller pieces, things that are easier to chew. I had one kid that, didn't ever want to have carrots in their lunch because they felt it took them too long to eat. So the mom chose a different veggie and they have carrots at dinner. So we talked a lot about, that was some of what to eat, but how to feed your child is also just as important. And I'll talk more about this later, but sometimes a little whimsy and a little colorful, assortment makes a big difference and goes a long way to making things look more inviting. And again, I'll go over that. How do I do this? Okay. So this is not all that inventive, but for some reason it stood out to me because I never think to pack a bagel or to do tortilla triangles. So And some of these pictures are just to jog your memory and what you can fill them with. There's cream cheese. You can add, jam or cucumber, hummus and cucumber, nut butters and jam, ham and cheese. Lots of things can be filled inside of this. But if you look at it just from it, you got your grain, you got a fat, you got some protein, a veggie and a fruit. And this is not complicated. And this is a complete nutritious meal. Other options, especially up here on the upper right, if you have, an insulated like thermos, you can pack like a breakfast for lunch, yogurt with granola. I've also seen like pancakes with peanut butter, like pancake sandwiches with peanut butter and jelly. You can do oatmeal with all the fixins, hemp or ground flax seeds, great fiber there. Add some maple syrup and blueberries, and you can arrange it so that they can mix it in themselves, like a little oatmeal buffet in a way. And to deconstruct a meal like that is really great because toddlers, as you know, love their autonomy and really want to flex it. And so to put things in little compartments and let them mix and match as they please it goes a long way with them. This bottom right here, again, it's nothing fancy, but you've got a complete meal. You've got this is an egg muffin in the bottom right corner of that, egg and spinach, I think. And, you've got your protein, some fat with that. You've got the fruits and veggies. And then the cereal I love also because you've got grains here, but also cereal, especially like Cheerios or, basically anything non-organic. Fortified cereals, great iron source for children. So it's actually one of the best, one of the most reliable iron sources for children are fortified cereals. And then moving on, I just love this presentation here, but you can see like there's nothing, it's composed, but there's nothing really fancy about this, but it does look nice. And the presentation matters. And here you have, a little deli spread. This left side, those are the Harvest Peace snaps. Those would count as a carb. You got your cheese and salami. Again, just nothing fancy here. I like this example because it's 3 different ways to do deli meat. You can do roll-ups or a Lunchable or like kebab styles on the sticks. My kids love to take things off of sticks, and there are some that are more child approved than others. So it's a fun way to do different deli meats. I have a very distinct memory of eating ham and cheese roll-ups as a kid. My mom was really big into that. And here we get into a little bit more fancy presentations with these sticks. And you can get these sticks off of Amazon, and there's different shapes, there's different themes. If your child has likes animals or unicorns, the gamut is run here. But this is one thing that can be packed into a lunchbox or kebab styles. And also keep in mind as we go that none of this is limited to lunch at school. This can also be done at home. So you could do kebabs with all these different combinations, with deli meats and cheese or fruit and cheese, tomatoes and a lot of cheese, as you can see. It goes well on a kebab. But even like little mini sandwiches here, you can just cut them up into squares and string them on there. If your child likes dipping sauces, you can certainly have add a dipping sauce into the lunchbox. They make little containers with cute little tops on them so it doesn't get all messy. But cheese is a great source for protein on those. Thermos lunches. Trying to go for theme here. You got your kebabs, thermos lunches, leftover dinners, mac and cheese. Someone had mentioned actually you can heat up pizza in the morning and then cut it into strips and put it into a thermos. I thought that was a different way to have warm pizza at school. But that could be an idea. Now more into the presentation. Sometimes I laugh at cutting things into shapes, but it really does make a difference. Sometimes it can be more inviting. There are little mini cookie cutters that you can get to make this happen. You could also invite your child to help you do this, like the night before or as an activity after school to pack their lunch the next day. And having them in the kitchen with you could also increase acceptance of these foods, especially if it's one that they like but are sort of so on, and you include it in their lunch. It could increase acceptance to have them be in the kitchen with you. But again, there's shapes. There's also these little leaf stems, if you can see, and on the bottom left, and then on the right, there's like these little panda bears and elephants. These are just pics that this person stuck in. That takes like no time at all. So it's just, to make it a little cute. That fish in the upper right is actually an egg mold, which, according to the designer of this, said in big warnings, like, this is not a time saver, but it's really cute if you want to do it sometimes. But if you think about it, there's fun shapes, fun pics, and colorful foods. I mean, this would be a fun lunch to open up and see. And if there's, a food that your child is so on, or maybe you're trying to get them to like, then just serve it in a really small amount. Like this bottom left here has like 2 tomatoes, not a lot of food waste, but the exposure is there for them visually. And maybe another child has tomatoes and is popping those in their mouth. I don't know. Here's some of the ways to make those presentations. You'll probably saw the silicone baking cups. I hadn't really thought to use that as dividers. I'm gonna go back here, but you can see that it's easy to put like hummus in there or just fruit in there to separate it. The cookie cutters and the picks, but it can really make a difference here. Here are, these are some of my 3 favorite sites that I go to for inspiration of either what to pack for lunch or how to pack it. But that second one, Kids Eat in Color, she's wonderful. She's got a great website. She's also got a really good Instagram page. And she's very good at how to talk to children about food and not nutrition, but about, just a great way of keeping things simple. And she'll talk, don't tell a child that food is healthy. They don't know what healthy is, but they do understand if orange foods can help them see in the dark. Like that could be something fun. So it's just different ways to think about how to talk to children about nutrition. And those are some great resources. I like this. You can keep if you're drawing a blank in the morning or the week, so you want some meal planning. I like this. This is basically a list of proteins, grains, fruits, as you can see, but you can just put this up on the wall and you're feeling stuck and you can just look at this and try to trigger some of your memory, and then use something like this. This is for, a whole day, but you could either use it for a day or you just use it for lunch every day of the week. And this is a way that you can plan out their lunch and make sure that they're getting a variety. So you're not repeating the same thing over and over again. Even if they ask for things over and over again, you could still give them a small amount of that preferred food and give them other foods too. So just because doesn't mean that you have to give them everything they want every single time. And then I'm going to land on this so I can give Maria some time as well and have time for questions afterwards. There's something called the division of responsibility. This is the foundation of childhood feeding right here. The parent is responsible for the what, where, and when of eating. And then the child is responsible for, of the food offered, what they will eat and whether they're going to eat at all. And I just completely misspelled whether. Sorry about that. But when this is followed, it leads to more relaxed meal times because it is not the parent's job to cajole or bribe or trick a child into eating. And it builds a trust between the parent and the child as well. The parent will learn that the child will eat when they're hungry and until they're satiated. And if they skip a meal, which happens in toddlerhood, then there's another eating opportunity later on that day. And that's really where the structured meals and snacks come in, is to provide all those eating opportunities. So if a child misses a meal, they have another chance. And if a child misses a meal because they're not hungry, they know that there's another eating opportunity coming up. It really fosters our innate intuitive eating. We're born with eating when we're hungry and only until we're satiated. And so this really helps to foster that. It's hard to do. As parents, we want to see our children eat. We want to make sure that their tummies are full and that they get all the proper nutrition. But really the best thing you can do is to offer the food and put it out there without any pressure to eat. You can certainly talk about sensory components of food, like the colors of the food, the texture of the food, the smell, the touch of it. If they poke it, does it, is it squishy, or does it crunch if you snap it? Like all those sensory components. If they can try to smell it, they could lick it, they can just bite on it and spit it out. All of these like sensory components are wonderful to talk about and help your child to better understand that food before putting it in their mouth. That's a huge component as well. And I do want to touch on that these structured meals and snacks are also really important, as I'm sure Maria would agree, for oral health too. When you're eating and you're during a mealtime, your salivary glands are going and they're starting to break down the food, and they're very active in your mouth at that time, and things are getting washed down, and you're drinking water with it too. So it's coming in the mouth and it's leaving the mouth. If you have this set time, if you're grazing all day, that's just happening all the time. And it just leaves excess food in your mouth. It's too long. It's just sitting in the mouth for too long versus a sit down meal or a sit down snack. And I'm going to leave it at that because I know Maria has some tie-ins to that later. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll let Maria take over, and then we'll do some questions at the end.
Awesome. Thanks, Liv. So I have, in response to your awesome presentation, kind of rearranged some of my talking points to dovetail in a little bit better. Our original game plan was to touch base on toothbrushing for 2-3-year-olds, snacks for oral health, beverages, diet, and positive associations for dental visits. So if anybody has a really strong opinion that you want to hear one of those, pop it into the chat and I will make sure not to miss it. But I would like to springboard off of your conversation about grazing, because I think that is the bottom line most important thing to know about the tie-in between diet and nutrition and oral health. And you touched on some good parts, but the idea here, I have patients who come in the office every single day and they tell me, my kids don't eat sweets, they don't eat candy. And they'll give the list of very healthy things that their children eat. And you go, wow, I wish I ate that way. But it is not sweets and candy that typically cause cavities. It is carbohydrates. And so carbs come in many forms, and sometimes they sneak in on us in different ways. And what happens underlying is that when we eat food that contains carbs, there's bacteria in our mouth and we cannot sterilize our bodies. We wouldn't want to. Microbiome is really important. And so the bacteria in our mouth also consumes the carbs that we are eating. And these can be really refined carbohydrates, or these can be more complex carbohydrates. And to some level or another, the bacteria in our mouth is still going to ferment it. And when it ferments it, it turns it into acid. And if that happens for a 2 to 3-year-old at breakfast, if it happens at lunch, it happens at dinner, and it happens for 1 to 2 snack times, they won't typically get cavities. But if that duration is more frequent than that, and that is a very healthy grazer, for instance, someone who enjoys a bite of fresh fruit in between their meals and snacks, a little nibble here of crackers, a little nibble here from their lunch, and maybe their carb exposure count is 6 to 8 in a day. Milk counts as a carb exposure. that child with an excellent diet, nutritionally speaking and body health speaking, might actually be at risk for oral health. And the trick is not to take away these great foods that you want them eating, but figuring out how to make this work for you. So one of the things I loved in Liv's presentation was the comment on snacks, talking about nutritional deficit, I think was the word, or something that they hadn't caught up in their meal. The idea that their tiny tummies can't always fit everything in each meal that you want them to have, but over the course of the day, you'll catch it. I like that when parents use snacks with intention.
They fill
to offer
nutritional gaps.
There it is, nutritional gap. That was the word. I love it when parents use snacks with intention, because if not, snack time isn't meant to mark the hours. Snack time wasn't supposed to be an activity per se that broke up in between free play and something more structured in the room. It's actually nutrition. And so perhaps that's an opportunity to pick a calcium containing resource, because calcium is really important when the body is growing as fast as these little guys are, and it has to choose, where's this calcium going to go? If you don't have enough calcium, it's going to choose the bones over those developing teeth every time. So we need to make sure to slip that in. So the spoiler alert on this is that my favorite snack, if you choose one to add in with great regularity, is cheese. Cheese is the super snack that fights cavities. Not just does not cause cavities, fights cavities because of the casein. It's not just a calcium containing dairy food. It has a specific protein that goes into tooth structure and helps pull in the minerals and remineralize it. So when you sometimes have children that are more prone to cavities, I encourage the family to look at the daily eating structure and replace one high cavity risk food, a carbohydrate, typically a sticky carbohydrate, with cheese. So that not only eliminates a food risk, it puts a positive intervention in. So it's one of my favorites to place into that routine. And it doesn't have to always be the, like, I see a great question. Is it any cheese? Does Parmesan cheese count? If it's enough of it. Most kids aren't eating a good bite of Parmesan cheese that's sprinkled on top. You really want it to dissolve in the saliva to get that effect. And Parmesan's pretty salty, so it's hard for, unless you're giving them like an actual square of it to chew. The Parmesan cheese probably isn't giving you the bang for your buck you're looking on that. But it can be very simple American. It can be, my kids have decided Manchego is their thing this week. You know, it'll be something else next week. But an actual serving of cheese per se. Did I miss anything else in chat questions? Cool. Thank you so much for asking that one. So talking about nutritional gaps. The other thing, which I think is very surprising to some families, but it aligns very much with nutrition, is beverages. As adults, I think that a lot of us are aware we don't necessarily want to drink in our calories if it's not a really satisfying thing. That vision that like a glass of juice isn't very satisfying, but if you're having food that might have the same calories, you'll feel more full. And fruit every time, right? So for teeth, there are some interesting hints in there. I have a lot of families that water down their juice, and they are intending to make a healthy choice. And if you are choosing to have juice in your child's diet, and there's some great examples why you might choose that. You might have a child that gets very constipated and you use juice as medicine. You might have a child that is a little fussy about flavors and you're trying to increase intake of fluids, and by putting watered in juice you are able to increase their fluid intake for some reason. Yeah, I know, it's a worry for me too. I don't love it.
Well, you might have a child who doesn't drink milk, and so you have calcium fortified orange juice.
Ooh, that's the one that I do recommend as an in for it. But what I find is if I ask about the diluted apple juice, it's important to know the body might look at that caloric intake, sugar intake one way, but the teeth still saw it as a frequent sugar if they get diluted apple juice over a frequent period in the day. So as far as oral health goes, one serving of juice, one seated time of juice in a day would not negatively impact oral health, but frequent sips of juice throughout the day, even if it's diluted, actually can be very harmful to the teeth. And in an exaggerated form, if you had a child sipping diluted apple juice all day long versus a child who chugged 2 liters of Mountain Dew, now we know that that's not a good choice. But as far as the teeth were concerned, teeth would fare better with the quickly consumed Mountain Dew than sipping diluted apple juice all day. And so it's just important to use this intervention that you're doing. You might be diluting juice, but actually also limit the offerings of it, maybe to once a day with a meal, as opposed to all day. And especially as these warm summer months start kicking in, that's something that creeps into behaviors. Vitamins. Not everybody needs to take vitamins, but you might choose to take vitamins. And I always ask families, do you use vitamins? And if you do, they'll usually hop to and they'll be like, yeah, it's a gummy. And I'll be like, okay, let's work with this. So usually by the time a parent has come to the dentist and chosen to give their child a gummy vitamin, I understand that they probably did so for a reason. They probably are feeling they need to meet some sort of nutritional gap, and they probably are also feeling their child would not accept it in another form. Sometimes kids are picky about really sweet things like vitamins. So I typically ask, is that the only vitamin? And they'll often tell me the story of trials and tribulations on how they landed with just that one that works. And I go, okay, let's work with it. So if there has to be a sugary vitamin, remember it's a sugary vitamin and do not treat it as just medicine. Some examples of oops in this case is very often I'll see families give their kids a vitamin right before bed. They go through their whole awesome bedtime routine, they brush their kids' teeth, and then boop, in their mouth goes a gummy vitamin, which then stays on their teeth all night long. I promise you that is job security for me, but I don't need that work. So if you can just make that work a little better, putting vitamins earlier in the meal, so you get the benefit of all the saliva flowing, you get the benefit of the chewing, mastication, food actually pulling it off their teeth, and then bedtime toothbrushing is a really helpful, mindful way of dealing with those vitamins. The other time that I see the accidental or unintended consequence is I will hear families that are so proud. They wake up every morning and their children brush their teeth, then they go downstairs, they have breakfast, they get their gummy vitamin, and they head straight out the door to school. And it's another time that the gummy sticky stays on the teeth. And gummy things like fruit snacks and gummy vitamins, they don't count as one carb. They count as a few carbs because they are putting the sugars in the mouth, and then it takes 20 minutes after they're cleaned off of the teeth for the acid to drop down in our mouth. So you could have an acidic mouth for a full hour and a half after its consumption if you didn't get it off of the teeth with some other thing. One of my favorite examples of some other thing, because even I, a dentist, I don't carry a toothbrush with me to the playground. I mean, I don't even bring diapers and wipes all the time anymore. I have a second kid, so it's a smaller bag than first kid. So I think in terms of food pairings, you already know my cheese one. But sometimes when you see kiddos eating crackers, I'm not even picking on obvious things like Oreos here. Crackers, carbohydrate, sticks in the teeth, puts them at risk at cavities if it stays there. So pair it up with something crunchy. I have a friend who did this really cute video with her son where she had him chew an Oreo, dark chocolate, very visible on those back teeth, and then had him chew an apple slice to show how it helpfully clears it out. And so when you're pairing things up, if you are having carbohydrates, and these are really convenient things to have around, and I understand that they're commonplace in diets, pairing them up with something that helps clean off the teeth, pairing them up with sips of water on the playground, things like that are really helpful habits to teach children how to take good care of their teeth. So the term I use for that, instead of calling it healthy, I say, oh, take the bite of the apple, it makes your teeth really strong afterwards. So, all right, so crunchy foods. Apples are, so the idea would be like fresh, so the fresh fruits and vegetables category that you could take with you. Otherwise the cheese stick, because that's pretty portable by the end of the day. If you put like a cheese stick in your purse in the early part of the day, it's completely edible by the end of the day. But slices of apples, carrot slices. For some reason, my kids are really into those like jicama slices, the cucumber ones, anything that could go a little bit crunch. But the mushy or fruits, delicious, fiber containing, not doing the same job. So a banana is not clearing the teeth of carbohydrates, but it's also not that sticky either. So it's a decent snack if that's where you're going with things. Now, augmenting, there are also some smart awareness things you can do. Nut butters are one of my favorites. If nut butters are part of your routine in your family, they do not need to be cavity causing because they are delicious without added sugar. Peanut butter, you can find peanut butter that is ground with or without salt, depending on what you're trying to present to your children, and it tastes very good without added sugar. Almond butter, cashew butter, all of these, all the nut butters, your child probably would not notice if you bought one that did not have added sugars in it. And then it becomes more of a protein than a protein and carb with these things. Same level of satiety, just as sticky as it was, just as satisfying as it was, but no longer as sweet. So it's one of my favorite things to add on to those crunchy things and make things more durable.
Smucker's makes a creamy, Smucker's Natural makes a creamy and a crunchy that is low sugar and really, really good. At least I think it's of the
low sugar or sugar free.
It's a low sugar.
Yeah, I like the Trader Joe's. It's actually no sugar. It's just the nuts and the salt, and it's less expensive than anything I've found in the grocery stores. There's also one at BJ's, their house brand. So it's a much bigger container, but still pretty creamy and good. And it's because the thing with dental is it's not low sugar, it's sugar exposure. And this is a sticky sort of thing that stays on the teeth. So that's why I always like people to be aware of their nut butters and that you have an option in that category. Let's see. Okay, so the other one, I feel like this came up all week for me, was modeling of sweets. So I like to ask parents, what are the treats that you eat? And because I think that children are going to do what their parents do. You have a lot of people that talk about, my parents had cavities, I have cavities, my kids will probably have cavities. They have this belief structure that it's genetic. And I'm sure sometimes it is, but very often it's behavioral. You learn how to eat from your parents. You are teaching your children how to eat based on how you eat to some level or another. Very rarely do we offer to our children the opposite of what we think is good for ourselves. We might negotiate and find our way somewhere in between the two, but we probably want them to eat very similarly to how we eat. So when I talk to parents about their own habits, tell me what you prefer as your sweets, treats, and desserts. I want to know. And I hear sometimes the story, oh, we like ice cream, but we don't give it to our kids. And I'm like, okay, that's good to know though, because you are choosing a treat that melts right off of the teeth. So someday, if you choose to give your child sweets, I would love to see it paired with a meal as opposed to a snack in between. See, limiting frequency, it's already dinner time. So if the carbs are included in that meal time, they wash off the teeth and it doesn't count as two. And then I love the idea that that treat might be the same thing that you already like ice cream. And then I say, I like ice cream, cookies, chocolate. These things all melt off the teeth. and you're going to brush teeth anyway, so it limits the duration. And I'd like you to keep in mind that there are some that are a little more harmful to the teeth. Those are the gummy, sticky, the sour, and the lollipops. And the reason they're harmful is not because they have more sugar, it's because they linger longer. So if those could be limited, I always make that recommendation. Now, Liv, we've talked about this. Who can't limit those? Allergic
I have
kids.
my 2.5-year-old walking by the doctor's office on the way home from something daily. I want a lollipop.
Oh, yes, valid. Swim practice was that for me. My son was doing swim lessons pre-pandemic over at Penn Charter, and every single time they had a cup of dum-dums out. So I carry dentist lollipops in my purse. That's what he calls them. But they're xylitol lollipops, and they're actually delicious. And instead of causing cavities, they fight cavities because xylitol disrupts the metabolism of the bacteria that causes cavities. So if you're like me and the walk by of that lollipop thing causes a meltdown every single time, I do stash those in my purse, and my son is perfectly content to say, "Mom, can I have a dentist lollipop instead?" And I'm like, "Here you go, buddy."
My son tried one the other day and
Oh, did he like it? Yes, for the win.
I thought of you.
Yeah, I love those. It's just a helpful substitution, and it's the equivalent for adults. You know, those Orbitz commercial, can't brush to chew. It's actually not wrong. If you could chew that sugar-free gum after eating, it really does reduce your cavities risk because it buffers with saliva and clears off the teeth. So, but children, really, we don't want them chewing gum, and they'll swallow it or leave it in inappropriate places if they're even old enough to not choke on it. But the xylitol lollipop seems to hit that same space. So I have gone on there. I've hit my beverages. I've hit my frequency, nutritional gaps, and modeling. Is there anything, is there a difference between how all these things impact baby teeth versus adult teeth? Yes. The difference is the tooth, not the food. But these are great recommendations for adult teeth as well. And the problem is the risks to baby teeth happen so much faster. The way, prior to opening my practice, I was a dental educator. I have taught dental students and dental residents for 10 years now. And the way I explain this to them is, you are now in your 20s, and you may have gotten your first cavity, and that took 15 years. This is a 3-year-old. They just got that tooth last year, and it's already half gone. So it's not that the bacteria is stronger, it's the tooth is thinner. So it gets through that hard outer surface a lot faster, and it is more carb mediated. The carbohydrates in young children and the frequency of their feeds, it's harder to control. So all of these habits are great for adults to adopt and model because they are going to learn and they're going to believe in what they see you doing. I had somebody once sort of laughingly say, if you sit there and you put broccoli on their plate, but you don't eat it yourself at the meal, there's no way they're going to believe you it's not poison. But if you say this is the most delicious broccoli in the world and you nom it down, at some point in time, they may pick it up too because they'll believe you. Same thing with all these other things. What you eat and what you model is a really powerful message. So take care of yourself. Self-care is really good childcare.
Thank you, Maria.
My pleasure.
Do you have any other topics or?
Yeah, I have a little more. If anybody doesn't have a specific question, I can go deeper dental if you'd like.
Let's open up to questions for a minute, and if not, we can hear more deeper dental.
Sure.
Well, while we're waiting for it to come in, I'll just say that another bonus of these structured meals and snack times, aside from promoting good oral health, is it also helps to promote healthy appetites. It gives your child a chance to get hungry in between an eating time, so that they come to the table hungry versus grazing all day. That will kill an appetite. And if they're, eating frequently, it's no wonder that they won't eat dinner that night. They've been filling up all day. So it's just nice. It's a win-win there for oral health and nutrition. Do I have any thoughts on giving probiotics? I think this is for me, I'm going to guess. Probiotics are, they can be beneficial. I feel like if a child is eating a varied enough diet that it's not necessary, they're going to be getting all the nutrients to have a healthy gut. Or have been some studies with maybe with like constipation or some IBS patients that some probiotics could be helpful, but it's very specific strains of that. Overall, again, if they're eating a varied diet, I don't think it's necessary. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you both so much for this. First of all, I don't feel like typing, so I'm going to ask my question. So this is more of like, this is something I do. Is this okay? Kind of question. This is more to Liv. So obviously we want our daughter to eat lots of fruits and vegetables, but she chooses other foods on the plate first and like doesn't want to eat the fruits and vegetables, even though she likes them. So one thing we do is, she'll ask like, okay, how many bites do I need? And we'll be like 5. And then she makes us count each bite. So it's kind of like a game for her. So it's like good she's eating fruits and vegetables, but I also don't want her to think that she like, it's a requirement to like overfill on fruits and vegetables. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think sometimes it's fun to gamify things, but with this, if this is so consistent, there's a part of me that does wonder if she feels like it's pressure, and she seems to be playing into it, but I'm curious to know like what would happen. Like if you've ever tried, when she says, how much do I have to eat? You say, up to you, how many do you want to eat? You can try like putting it back onto her, or just say like, whatever you want. We're not going to count tonight. I would leave that open-ended and see where she takes that. Because you're right. You don't want her to feel that pressure, but this is sort of interesting where she's kind of playing this game back at you. So I leave it, open-ended with her, and just not pressure. That's what I would try that.
Great. Thank you.
Trying to see if there's anyone below that I'm missing. No. How would you handle a toddler who keeps asking for more food at mealtime? Well, I would give it to them. I think also some of that might be depending on, I get asked that question sometimes. Is it okay if they ask for only more pasta, but they don't want to eat anything else, a more carb heavy? I don't know if maybe that's touching on this, but a toddler will regulate their intake and eat until they're full. So if they would like some more food, then they can have some more food. I think the only time I would deny that is if you're trying to save food for other family members or trying to save something for, let's say, lunch the next day or something. Then you explain that to them, that this is what you're doing as a family, or let's let everyone else have some first before you take more. That kind of thing. So it depends on the scenario. Not sure if I answered that question fully, Christina.
I have another question. This is for Maria. So in terms of electric toothbrushes, by the way, I'm also a general dentist, so
Wonderful.
Hi, yeah, hello. What kind of electric toothbrushes do you recommend for toddlers, if at all?
Okay. So usually I ask, is there something you're trying to fix? Like if toothbrushing is going well, or if the teeth look clean when they come in, their manual technique is working. So for a lot of families, that's really all that is needed. But there is a special type of toddler, the toddler that speaks with the only purpose in life to say, I do it. that's the toddler that often the electric brush is helpful. And the reason it's helpful is because then they can like fist grip the brush and you can direct it from the other end and sort of get the job done a lot better. So when I have a family who comes in with one of those, oh, by the way, I have one of those. She's strong-willed. What I'll suggest is, one, I stopped recommending the drugstore ones. They all have button batteries in them, and it makes me very nervous as a safety hazard in the household. And they are spin brushes as opposed to sonic brushes. And I do think the sonic brush really does a much better job gently and consistently. So for families that are coming in the office in the last 6 months, I've been telling them there is one that I can find that's on sale right now. The kids one is on sale. And so it's not a very expensive, but it is a true sonic brush. So I like the Burst one that you can get online. And I use that one for my kids. But if you personally already use an electric toothbrush, modeling, going back to that old thing, they're probably into it because you're using it. And so you could just get another head for the one that you have and use the same one. And so that cuts down on costs, it increases the modeling aspect of it and gets the job done. So that's oftentimes the advice that I give to families.
There's a question here about, do you have any tips or suggestions for a kid with slightly delayed feeding and swallowing abilities? For example, her bite sizes of solids are still relatively tiny and she relies a lot on liquid nutrition like Pediasure. Do you know, are the bite size small? Are the bite sizes small because of inability to swallow larger? Is that the case? Or is it a fear of being able to swallow? I just want to get a better feel for that.
Hi, thanks. Oh, that was my question. I think part of it is that she had a feeding tube early in life. And so she's like 3.5 now. And so we're trying to think about her, going to lunch and stuff like that. And she's really done so much better, but it's kind of like, essentially this is kind of like right up our, well, like, how do we, pack her lunch for her? So we honestly, we're not really sure. It's a really good question. Like, we wonder if it is lingering, fear and trauma from years past, or if it's just still, because she can do it, and if it's a texture thing or something like that, or if it's just a, preference. So it's one way of saying we're not really sure. And she used to, gag or cough a lot more on things, and she's really honestly stopped doing that a lot. So now we're not sure if it's a matter of ability or just she does get fatigued too, and so maybe we're giving her textures that are too difficult still. So it's so it's usually a big experimentation, I guess. So but like what you mentioned earlier, there'll be something that she's really successful with, and then she may not touch it again for like another week, and then so it's kind of like, oh, where's our silver bullet kind of thing. So
yeah, children, they get fatigued. Like if you give them the same thing over and over again, even if they request it, like they request because in part they don't know anything else. And they get food fatigue just like we do. And so, we do need to be careful about that, mindful of it, and providing variety. And I would say to your daughter, if you can try to figure out what texture she does best with, is comfortable with, and then try and watching her swallow. Has she had like a swallowing eval recently?
No, I mean, the only official thing she ever did was for liquids that actually, and to rule out sort of like liquid swallowing, but she never did something for solids officially, to be honest.
Okay. So she's never had any sort of like incremental step up in texture difficulty, so to speak, like something mushy versus like meat. Like meat's going to be really tough and like chewy and harder to swallow versus something that's crunchy versus something that's like a roasted sweet potato that's soft and can be mushed in their mouth, or an avocado. Like, have you, I'm just trying to think, like, what is she comfortable with? And then how can we,
right,
step up wise from that?
Yeah. I mean, she's definitely better with crunchy hard things, I guess I would say.
Okay.
And it's kind of the mushy things that like something like hummus, for instance, she may still have trouble with sort of getting that down her throat, for instance.
Yeah, because hummus
Surprisingly,
is it's not a puree, but her body, like mentally, she thinks a little bit, I should be able to swallow this, but it's too thick to swallow. Like
Maybe,
it
yeah,
does
right,
need to
so,
be manipulated around. And maybe this is something where we could talk a little bit more offline.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I don't want to hold up I know, well, we have a minute left, so yeah. You have a quick
There's just a
suggestion
lot
with
more to
it.
talk about on this one, but it's a very interesting area, and I love to speak to you more about it.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm sure I can find your email or something if I have more. And I definitely don't want to take up too much of your personal time and stuff, but you know.
No, I mean, this is what I do. So yeah, my email, my email's on like some of the
It might have been one of the
bulletins that went out.
communications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you can email Nicole. She has my email too.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
I want to chime in because when I saw that one, I actually thought that was an interesting one on my side. That the description that you gave a child that was had the NG tube at an earlier age, had trouble going through food progresses, and that you still notice it, maybe a delayed feeding, swallowing abilities, and relying on Pediasure to make up the gap. Those children tend to be at elevated risk unless you're very aware of the frequency, because Pediasure is one of those that tends to be offered frequently and sipped along the day. And it's really difficult to get extra mouth care in because you don't want that to become a struggle. And so being mindful of that, dovetailing it with sips of water at the end, and being aware that it doesn't get long durations because you're just desperately trying to get the nutrition in. I see some children who end up needing Pediasure in that prolonged way, and for that reason, they tend to need to go to the dental visits a little more frequently because of that elevated risk. So just sort of keep an eye on that because you've got enough on your hands. You don't want to worry about the teeth too.
Yeah, we try to brush 3 times a day, and I feel like it's not enough.
Yeah, but you're aware, right? Like you're on.
Yeah.
And that's really good, and it's important.
Thank you.
Well, if there's no other questions now, then we will sign off. Thank you everyone so much for joining us this evening, and thank you to Maria for all your wealth of knowledge here. And everyone have a good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
both so much.